this is going to, after the 1 week, whatever hiatus it is, we are incredibly grateful to have Heather Monahan on the show with us. Uh, for those of you that might not know Heather, she is one of the most encouraging and inspirational individuals that you can ever get to know because of the things that she's done. If you read her bio, she's a top 50 keynote speaker. She's also a 2-time best-selling author, one of which you'll see behind one of the books is right behind her there, Overcome Your Villains. She also created a book or authored a book called Confidence Creator. I had the opportunity to listen to part of that, and that got me pretty stoked as well because it incorporated what she learned from her kid. And what a wonderful, wonderful learning experience. But also she is a TEDx speaker. Well, not TEDx anyways, TED speaker, straight up TED speaker. And she is also the CEO of Boss in Heels, which is also a very successful podcast. So Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure to be here with you. I can't tell you how excited I am, but well, let's just jump into this. I have seen so many things about you because as I was looking at inspirational people, your name kept on popping up. And let's face it, it was a 1 in a million shot. I thought, let's reach out. And I couldn't believe you were responding. So first of all, thank you very much. It does something that you profess about, and that's confidence. That got my confidence up quite a bit there. But I want to give the audience a little bit about you. How, or not how, but where did it all start? I know that there are a lot of interviews that have said, I started out, our family was on food stamps, or I grew up in this type of thing. From there till now, would you mind giving us a little Reader's Digest version about that?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I had grown up poor. And so I had been working since the time I was 9 years old. I had a paper route. I bussed tables at diners, worked in fast food restaurants, started waitressing, then bartending. And really during that time was refining my sales process and sales technique. And so when I graduated college, I naturally went into sales and went to work for the Gallo Winery. I ended up being the youngest brand manager 1 year at the company. And then I was sexually harassed. So I quit and I ended up in the radio business by chance and became the #1 salesperson there. First year I worked there, and was offered an equity partnership at age 24. And my partner said to me, I'm going to drop you off somewhere. You have to be going just for money. Don't ask me where you're going. If you're willing to make this commitment, you're going to be my partner. So I jumped on a plane. He dropped me off in Saginaw, Michigan. And my job was, we acquired a company for $25 million. And my job was to accelerate revenues as rapidly as possible. I did that and sold that company for $55 million in under 3 years. And that really put my name on the map in the media world in regards to revenue generation and delivering, at high levels. So I went to a publicly traded company, pitched myself for a job that didn't exist. I was awarded VP of sales for the country. And over the next 14 years, I was promoted 3 different times until I was ultimately the chief revenue officer. And during my tenure there, we more than doubled the company's revenues. When I was fired 5 years ago, I was delivering in excess of 200 million a year annually, myself and my team. And I was recognized as one of the most influential women in radio. And then 3 weeks later, I was fired when the CEO I had worked for 14 years decided to promote his daughter to replace him when he fell ill. And she terminated me immediately, which ended up giving me the opportunity to write and self-publish my first book, Confidence Creator, and then subsequently launched my speaking business, my podcast, and my second book, my consulting business. And then I was appointed to the board of directors of HealthLink Corporation 2 years ago.
That's a lot in a short space of time. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, along with that journey, you had started something while you were working at that company, right? And that created some tension, if you will. And we're just wondering what was it about that tension that it was both. I know what it would be if I was in that situation. It's like, dadgummit, I want to stick to the guns here. But what happened? What were some of the thoughts that were going through your mind as you had something that you really believed in, but you were being told to drop it, if I remember correctly? And I mean, this is something that you could tell you're passionate about, but man, how did you face that?
So what you're referencing is about 1 year before I was terminated, I decided to launch a personal brand. For years, I had sat for a decade, actually, I had sat on the board of City Year Miami. I did a tremendous amount of charity work. And I did that because during the day, I was running a publicly traded company, essentially making rich people richer. I was making shareholders wealthy, of which I was a shareholder as well. So I had a vested interest. However, there was not this component of I was doing good in the world, right? I was just making rich people richer. And so I felt this loss that, there's something else more important out there. And so that's when I really leaned into my charity work. But then ultimately what I found was I would work and travel during the week excessively for my job. And at nights on the weekends, I was doing charity work and I wasn't with my child very much. And so I started thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to do good in the world and incorporate it simultaneously with what I do during the day, somehow, some way. And that's when I came up with the idea of launching my personal brand, which is what you're referencing, what caused me a lot of tension at my corporate position. Because I was in the C-suite, I had signed a non-compete, non-disclosure, I had signed so many agreements in order to accept that position. And when I launched my personal brand, which was just forward facing who I was, that I grew up poor, and here's how you make it to the C-suite, here's how I did it, here's how you get hired, here's all the hacks that I've learned. And immediately I was contacted by the CFO and GC, and they had said to me, based on your position, you need to shut this down. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. And luckily I had done my research. I knew this woman didn't like me. And so I had done my research, and Bank of America, which is a much bigger company than ours, had a CRO, same position that I was in, that had a public facing brand. There were so many, businesses out there that had high level executives with forward facing public brands. And so I said, listen, I've done my due diligence on this. I've spoken to attorneys. There's nothing in any of the agreements you've had me sign say that I can't launch a personal brand. I'll incorporate whatever verbiage you'd like to separate yourself from the personal brand, but I don't understand in excess of that, what else you would want me to do. And so it never went away. It was constantly an ongoing issue until the day I was fired. They basically wanted to intimidate me or pressure me, regardless of any verbiage in contract, to shut it down. And, looking back, I guess I understand when people feel threatened, you saying, well, I'm trying to do good in the world, that's not going to change the feeling that they have internally, right? If you feel threatened by someone, you feel threatened by someone. And the more I amplified my brand and the larger my brand grew, the more upset this other woman, became. And then it didn't help that I was named one of the most influential women in radio, during that window of time. And, ultimately that was the woman that fired me. And it was never said I was fired for that. She said, I think the way she articulated it to me was, now that I'm the CEO, I don't need a chief revenue officer. So I guess my assumption was she was saying she knew how to do that, that role. And she just didn't need me. She was getting rid of the position. That was how it was communicated to me. And they never replaced my position for that matter. But at that time, the company was trading, the stock was trading, I believe, at $12 a share. And today I think it's trading at $1 5 years later.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, and it's not a revenge thing. It's just when you stick to your guns and you were doing your job so incredibly well. And then that, oh, my goodness, talk about putting an agenda in front of what's good for the company and as a whole. Corporate America.
But one thing I'll say to that though is, in hindsight's great, but we don't know. No one has hindsight in the moment you make the decision. I don't know if she would make a different decision today if she could. However, I do know this. As a leader, you don't want to have people running side by side with you if you're threatened by them. If you don't feel like you can count on them, trust them, and you want to include them, which she didn't, she made that clear. So it probably was the right decision for her to get rid of me, whether I'm a top producer or not. If she was going to be waking up every day not feeling good about herself and she was the CEO, that wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Well, I think when you, I would say when you understand that, you also were able to turn that into, you said you call it an opportunity, and it led to additional opportunities, which is kind of nice too. You could have been bitter. You could have said this was, be the victim. I'm going to wallow in, getting fired or however you want to say it. So a lot of it is how you handled it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I did wallow in it for the first 24 hours for sure. I was devastated. I had worked in that industry for over 20 years. That was my network. I knew everybody, and I had to leave for 18 months because of the non-compete I had signed. So I was very upset and angry and felt, that I had been done wrong, and couldn't believe for 18 months I was going to have to start over as a beginner somewhere after I'd achieved such a level of success. That was really, really hard. But after 24 hours, I realized sitting there and feeling bad about it wasn't fixing it. And that, was ultimately the difference maker for me.
I wish we could take some of that from you and inject it in everybody. You have that opportunity to not wallow in anger. Anger is such a powerful emotion. And so many people, including me, have just wallowed in that garbage for so long that it takes away from the effectiveness to do anything good. And thank you for that secret sauce. Thank you for being that cool.
Well, I think it's more about personal preservation, or a true interest in my own personal success. Mm-hmm. The longer you stay attached to anger, the more your energy is going to be down. You're going to be giving your energy to that person you're angry at. So they're actually going to benefit, because I've got great energy. If I'm giving that to someone else, I'm depleting myself of it and boosting them up. And the more I would think about that, do I want to be elevating this woman, or do I want to elevate me? No, I want to elevate me. Okay, then I need to stop Googling her. I need to stop thinking about her. I need to say, you know what, this is a gift that you've given me, and now I'm going to let go and I'm going to run with it. And then eventually that led me to saying, in my mind, she never asked me, but in my mind, I said, and I also forgive her. I understand. I was threatened by people when I was younger. I couldn't have surrounded myself with them day to day. So I began to have empathy for her and understanding. I'm grateful I don't feel that way, but I was able to have empathy for her. And the more that I felt that way, I could detach and then start giving that energy right back to me. And that's when my business really started exploding.
Oh man.
Well, I want to reel back a little bit, because as you were giving what Marie says is the Reader's Digest version, I feel like a little bit, there's some big gaps there that I didn't understand. You're sitting there saying, okay, I was living in poverty. I started doing, kind of, like your high school jobs, your entry level jobs, but you were already refining your sales process. You were already, to me, it sounds like you were making a conscious decision even at a fairly young age of where you wanted to go and what you wanted to accomplish. Take us back to that time. Were you conscious of, I am going to take this job at fill in the blank, McDonald's or whatever it might be, that I am, where did that fortitude come from? How did you get that at such so early on in your career?
Yeah.
Did you
I believe that's, no, there was no strategy behind that. No, I didn't have any mentor back then guiding me. It was more survival. I knew that we were struggling financially in a very negative way. I knew that I saw people on TV that didn't struggle like that. So I thought, there's got to be a way that if I work hard enough, I can find a way out of this. And that was, really the guiding light I followed, was just work harder, work more, and amass as much money as you can so that you don't have to struggle like this someday.
But many times you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So I feel like a lot of times people, will go down that, let's say they're going to go down that approach. They can work and try and save money and, or whatever it might be, but they don't even have the knowledge of how to take it to the next step. How did you do that? I mean, where did that come from, or how did that progress? To me, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, it's totally normal, right? So I'll give you an example. I have friends that are in town right now. And so they're coming from Fort Lauderdale. I live in Miami. There's a train. It's a fast train called the Bright Line. It's new, it's relatively new, and it connects two locations seamlessly, very quickly. I send a message to them today. Hey, make sure that you set up the transportation that once you arrive in Miami, it brings you right to my condo. An hour later, I get a text back from one of my best friends my whole life. Heather, I don't know how to do it. Tried, no solution. What do I do? this is what the majority of people will do. I would never in my life send someone a text like that. It is so obvious to me. Google it. If you can't find it, then Google the phone number, then call someone there, ask someone for help. Not me. I don't work for Brightline. So most people just default to whatever is easiest or most convenient or closest. I don't live my life like that. I have a chapter in my first book, which I don't remember what I entitled it, but it's essentially like the 10 keys to sales. And it's about this. I was at a Dolphins game with one of my best friends and her husband. And she said, oh, huge problem. My husband needs a cup. I went up to get a plastic cup. They're holding plastic cups hostage. Can you go get the plastic cup? I said, why do you come to me? Now I know what the answer is, but I say, why do you come to me to get the plastic cup? She goes, because you'll do your thing that you do and you'll come back. Because here's the thing. What I do is since the time I've been 9 years old, I've been in customer service, I've been in sales. I watch people, I take the time, I'm thoughtful in my approach, and I'm not afraid of being told no, right? So all those things, she didn't work when she was young. She grew up in a very different situation. She didn't have a job. Like all these things were foreign to her, just like my friend today. The idea of like trying to figure out how to get from Brightline to my house sounded overwhelming. To me, it sounds like, yeah, that's going to take me 60 seconds. Let's bust through it, find a solution and move on. Most people what I found, and I'm grateful that I think so differently, that's what separates me from most people. I do get frustrated occasionally, but that whole chapter in the book is about how she wants me to go get the plastic cup. Of course, I went and got the plastic cup. It wasn't hard, right? It's all about this mindset and this shift from, oh, I have to give up now. There was an obstacle placed in front of me. I can't have the plastic cup to, I'm curious. I wonder how I'm going to get this done. I know I will, but I'm going to assess the situation. I'm going to map out who can I see, what are my opportunities? What's the point of best entry here? Like, this is how my mind works because I've trained it that way.
I love it. No, don't be afraid to say. I can't tell you how many times I've heard they're going to say no, and it's a crippling thing for so many people, right? Well, me included. I don't like being told no, but it is just grabbing it and just going with it. But you had also done so many things where you broke so many ceilings. There's so many references to that glass ceiling in your own career, and the glass ceiling it was typically for women, but now there's a whole new, anywhere from age to minority or whatever it might be. What are some of the things that you learned beside not taking no for an answer, which is very powerful in and of itself, but what are some of the things that you would tell someone that you might be mentoring that is younger, trying to get their druthers into a corporation or pursuing a dream, whatever it might be?
I do some executive coaching, and one of the women that I'm currently working with works at one of the top 10 largest companies in the US. She's an SVP, incredibly successful. However, like many people, she's given herself a glass ceiling. She's accepted certain limiting beliefs, right? Listen, I've done it many times in my career, and I know most people, the majority of people, do the same. So not to call her out, but I'll share the story because I know she would be happy for it to be shared to, help someone else. Her holdback was that the majority of her peers all had Ivy League degrees. She did not. So in her mind, and sometimes in meetings, people, she's one of the only females on the team. And sometimes people will point out, for everyone in Ivy here, you understand what I'm saying. They would use this exclusive way to kind of push certain individuals out to allow themselves to feel better, different, whatever. And so she took that on as, okay, they are better, different, whatever, I'm less than. And so when we started working together, and I have actually a chapter in my second book, Overcome Your Villains, about this, the importance of taking people off of pedestals, not so much because you're appreciating something about them, but because we live in a world where we are all equal. We want our children to treat everyone equal. If you want your kids to start treating everybody, regardless of where they went to school, sexual preference, ethnicity, or socioeconomic class, then guess what? You need to start seeing yourself as an equal first. And when you start putting that pressure on you to show up as an equal to everyone else, your kids will start emulating that. We'll get rid of all of this racism and insanity in the world. But it starts with you saying, just because you went to Harvard doesn't make you better than me. And it doesn't make me worse than you. We are equals because we're humans. And so really trying to challenge her to look at that just truth. And then when she accepted that as a truth, she began visualizing, seeing these people step off the pedestals and seeing her on equal ground with them. You know, she was able to start going into meetings saying, I warrant this seat right here. Yeah, you're right. Good for you that you went to that school. There's a lot of special and different things about me too, but you and I are still on equal footing here.
I love it. I love it. And you just brought a great example into play. I wanted to go to Ivy League. So I went to an Ivy League. I get there. I thought, I learned more stuff in junior college in here, man. And then I get to Wall Street and I'm working, and all the people that had some of the greatest ideas, yes, some of them came from the Ivy League, but they were usually the ones that were busting their butt and making their way. It was so cool to make that realization, because and to see it from both realms. So to your point, take people off your pedestals. Couldn't agree with that more. My oh my. But so there's another thing though too. You went in and there was a lot of times that you faced fear, and that fear is something that is, man, I can't tell you how many times I myself have negated things because of that fear. But you're saying don't let fear win. Matter of fact, I just wanted to, there was something that you had said on that. Oh, fear is a liar. Holy moly, that was so powerful, man. Fear is a liar. And so when you're the most fearful, I mean, you had to take steps. In the case when you're fired, that was just one thing. But have you ever been in a position where that fear was so paralyzing that you didn't want to take that step? And then how did you begin to take those steps? Because everyone's been there. It's just you've kicked it in the butt more than anyone I've seen. So.
Well, you know, it's really about leveraging those past experiences. And again, it's about discipline, right? So again, the best advice I could give anyone is keep a journal. Number one, keep a journal, because a journal is so powerful in understanding yourself, your deficiencies, what you're great at, and remembering, oh, wow, I have all these accomplishments. I forgot about them. I should start appreciating who I am. But also the flip of it is every time that you face fear and you survived it, right? And then as you begin really taking a moment each day, each week to appreciate that, oh yeah, I have faced fear a number of different times and I did survive and it did work out okay and it didn't turn out near as badly as I thought, then this situation today is going to be the same. And then you begin, it's like going to the gym and building up a muscle, right? It takes a little bit of time, but then you know, I'm sore today, but I know I'll feel better tomorrow and I'll be stronger as a result of it. It's the same exact way with building up that muscle to face fear and choosing to see it differently, but to see it as an opportunity, as a green light that means go. And then you begin building momentum. And then suddenly you're excited to face the fear because you're saying, this is a doorway to a new opportunity. I'm in a growth phase. Oh my gosh, this is, you know, what I was put on this earth to do.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. I love it. And the fact that you journal is a big deal to me. I've been keeping a journal since 4th grade. And I'm an old man now, and I have probably about 30, 40, 50, actually probably 50 volumes. And it is amazing what you learn over the course of your life. And I need to reference it more.
Start at 4th grade, do a review, go from the start.
But you'll notice, I bet you'll notice if you do go back and read through it, you'll see patterns from when you were a child that are still the same patterns, yes, you know, that are happening now. This is a chapter in my first book. When I was younger, I would decide for other people, you know, if I was good enough for something. I'd never have the conversation with them. I'd play it out in my mind. I wonder if I asked to do this, if they would say yes or no. You know, it probably would not be the right fit for right now. I'm going to go ahead and not ask. And I would think like that as when I was younger, you know, in elementary school, in high school, in college. And then in business, I found not always was I doing it, but I was still doing it occasionally. And I'll never forget, I wanted to headline and speak for this event. This is maybe a decade ago. And I knew I had the chops to do it. I knew I would knock it out of the park. I knew I was the right person, but I got in my mind again, I said, you know what, probably wrong thing to go ask this guy. I see him right now. He's busy. He probably doesn't want to be bothered. I'm going to go ahead and not do it. Cut to a month later, by chance, I was speaking at another event. He happened to be there, and he was a social friend of mine. I didn't know him very well, but socially, he texts me during my speech, "Holy cow, you're an incredible speaker. I am blown away." So then I felt I had permission from him. I went to my hotel room, I pulled out my computer, I sent a pitching me to him. He said, "No, not this year. I'm full on my roster. However, I'll add you for next year." So it wasn't, it wasn't like a layup, but he said, "I'll put you in for next year." And then I did the one stage that year, and the following stage, he gave me the main stage. But none of that would have ever happened if miraculously he didn't end up at a speech I happened to be giving. And that was one of those moments that when I read that in my journal, I thought, I was waiting for permission to pitch myself for something I knew I was good enough for. That's not only wrong for me, it's wrong for him, it's wrong for his audience. And when I decided to look at it in that regard, I was denying other people the opportunity for me to add value to them so that they could go to that next level. They could learn teachings and skills that they didn't have yet. That's not fair, all because I decided that I didn't have his permission to ask. And that's when I stopped waiting for other people to give me permission.
That is rocking. Yes. I say that very very sincerely, because I do coach multiple teams in rugby, and just to see they're waiting for permission from the coach, or waiting for this or that. What would you tell someone that or you recognize when you recognize someone waiting for permission, what are some of the things that you would suggest? I mean, they might not know it. They might not have the capability to do that right now, or they're waiting for the right opportunity. Like you might have waited for this individual, but he happened to be there. But how do you get people off that permission thing? Because that's another thing that I've seen so many times inhibit the progression anywhere from youth to executives. And when you recognize it, what do you go and say, "Hey, stop waiting for the permission"? Is it as simple as that? Or is there something else?
Well, typically when you look at people, you need to understand what motivates them, right? And this is just like leading a team of employees, right? So you need to know what motivates them. And I'm making it up, but let's say that this guy that you're trying to get to stop asking for permission, he's big into technology. Well, someone like that I would identify as someone's a tech guy that loves his phone and loves his Apple Watch. I'd say, okay, let's think of a Steve Jobs story, because he's going to relate to that. It's going to get his attention quickly, and it's going to impact his life. So I'd say, Tommy, how would you feel if you didn't have a cell phone today? When I grew up, I had a bag phone at best and a pager. How would you feel if you were living today with a pager or a bag phone instead of an Apple phone? Well, that'd be horrible. That wouldn't have happened because of Steve Jobs. Right. What if Steve Jobs had waited for someone to grant him permission? He would have never created a product. You wouldn't be sitting here with that phone. Would that have been worthwhile for him? Would that have been time well spent? Well, no, of course not, Heather. He couldn't wait for permission. He had to move forward and do it. Okay, then let's apply that same methodology to you. We don't know what's ahead of you and what you're about to do and legacy you're going to leave in your life. And we never will if you're going to sit around and wait for permission. Don't screw up the future for the Tommy 20, 30 years from now. Step into the fear, step into the opportunity, just like Steve Jobs did, because you're thanking him for that gift today.
Oh my goodness. Again, step into the fear, man. Step into the fear. All right, Gary, you're smiling, man. You got to have something. I'm sorry for.
Oh, no, that's all right. One of the things I want to ask you, Heather, is just listening to you talk, is the word momentum comes to my mind. Like you seem like a person of momentum. And we know from, I don't know, physics way back when, that getting something moving is incredibly hard, and it gets easier over time. I want to know what momentum means to you. Both from the beginning stage, and then once you have something going, how do you start the momentum? How do you maintain it?
Well, for me, starting momentum was easy because I grew up poor, right? So typically if somebody has an uncomfortable situation they don't like that they want to change, that's easy, right? Because you just have to tell them, well, if you get moving, look what's ahead of you, and paint that picture of possibility, right? There's people out there that are wealthy. They have private jets. They don't worry about food stamps. Once I understood that, I said, well, I got to get moving, right? Staying where I am was not where I wanted to stay. I wanted something different. Didn't know how to get there, but I knew I wouldn't get it if I stayed still. So it was better to just try something than to do nothing. So that's the easiest thing, is when you have someone in a situation they don't love, is helping them to shine a light on that and say, do you like where you are? The bigger problem, I believe, with momentum is when someone's complacent, because where they are isn't bad. And so let's use people in maybe in corporate America. Maybe they don't have the best boss. Maybe they're not passionate about the work they're doing. Maybe they love their family and they're making an okay living. They're paying their bills and they're like, I don't know that I want to upset the apple cart. Those are the people that are much more challenging to get to take the leap to start building the momentum. And you have to start really, really small with them so that you can show proof of concept. Because that's the key. Once someone understands the proof of concept, oh, wow, you're right, I was scared to do that, or I didn't really want to get up and do that, but I did it and it felt better. I did it and it unlocked an opportunity I would have never received otherwise. So starting really small to prove that concept, that's going to start somebody on the path of momentum. And then, I mean, it's Newton's law, Newton's third law, I believe, that, then you have to get out of the way, right? Because that pace will pick up. Once somebody owns that, understands it, and has processed it, and that becomes the new behavior, they're just going to start moving faster and faster, because they now know, they're aware, wait, if I keep getting up and doing this, other good things are going to happen. This feels good to me. I don't know what lies ahead. That's really exciting. I don't need to say I'm afraid anymore. Now I'm excited for what's to come next. And again, they're reading their journals, they're looking at the changes they've made, and they like the start of this new life. They'll start picking up speed on their own, and you won't have to worry so much about it. I think the challenge is getting someone started.
So I'm guessing that you probably have a really good, healthy relationship with failure. Like, failure is not something to be ashamed of, not something to shy away from.
I'm not, listen, a lot of people saw me getting fired as a failure. I didn't see it that way. I guess it's how you see it. You see situations. I Googled who has been successful in life that's been fired. Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, J.K. Rowling. I mean, the list went on and on. Mark Cuban, the most successful people in the world. So to me, I thought, I'm in good company, right? I didn't see that as a failure. I saw that as a pivotal moment in my career to be celebrated. And I posted about it. I did something different. And a lot of people did not like that, right? Even to this day, people say, why do you still talk about getting fired? And it upsets them. They don't like that. So I guess it's how you choose to see something, and everybody's going to see things from a different lens through your own experience, your own personality. So I guess that's first and foremost. I don't know, a failure, that's hard. I mean, listen, there's epic fails in life. Like, you just make a bad decision, right? You ran a red light, you get in a car accident. That's a fail. Like that's an epic fail, right? That was something that could have been avoided. I'd be very upset about and frustrated about. But I've learned through life to beat myself up over things is going to make me feel worse. Instead, like, what can I learn from the situation? Again, how could I teach my child about this? I'm not going to come home and say, I'm an idiot, I should have never done that. No, I'm going to come home and say, made a really big mistake today. I feel really badly about it. Here's what I learned from it. But I know if I keep being hard on myself, tomorrow's going to be another hard day. I want tomorrow to be a better day. Here's some of the things I can do differently. Here's how I can take care of myself. I try to make those things teaching moments for myself and for my child. But I don't know, failure, I feel like people want to point a finger at failure. Like, oh, you failed you failed because you got fired. You failed because your first book didn't make New York Times bestseller list. Well, to me, it's great to have stretch goals. If I don't reach them, that's not a failure. It just really depends how you define failure, I guess.
Well, I guess the reason I even mentioned that is because it seems like there's kind of two sides to what we'll call failure. Is some people it creates a victim mentality, which is a damning effect. And then, or they kind of do paralysis by analysis. Well, I'm not going to do anything unless it's 100% guaranteed to work. Whereas when I listen to you, it's, first of all, own it, move on, but also I'm going to execute. It may not be perfect, it may not work out, but even if it doesn't, I'm going to learn something and move on to the next thing. It seems that's kind of that momentum thing. It seems like you have this mentality of, I'm doing it, doggone it, get out of the way. You don't have a perfect plan. Even when you were younger, you didn't know where you were going. You just knew, like, I'm going to work harder than anyone else. I'm going to do it the best of my ability, and you'll get there. So that's why I bring up the failure thing. And I use that kind of failure as a tongue in cheek a little bit too, because I don't think you really look at failure as what people would define failure to be.
Yep.
Listen, if success was easy, everybody would have it, right?
Yes.
So for me, when I had to start over as a rookie author, a rookie podcast host, a rookie, national speaker, or everything, a rookie board member, I didn't have expertise in any of these things.
Yeah.
And at 43, I was used to being the expert in the field for 20 something years. There was moments I'm like, oh, I'm not, how the heck am I going to make it? And I had to pump the brakes on me and remind myself, wait a minute, I remember when I was 21 years old and I started my first sales job, I was a rookie and it wasn't guaranteed I was going to win. And I made plenty of mistakes along the way, but that's how I got so good, right?
Yes.
So it's about, and Gary Vee talks about this all the time, enjoy the journey. Well, I think that's a stretch because once you've made it, and I've made it to the top of the hill, yeah, it's easy to say enjoy the journey because I'm at the top looking down at you.
Yeah.
So I don't know necessarily that I'd say it's that easy of enjoy the journey when you're in the struggle. But it's know that there's other times in your life. When I played softball, I didn't start out as the MVP and captain. I made my way there, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I know if I did it in softball when I was a kid, if I did it in sales, as I did in sales leadership, like all these times I started out as a rookie. I didn't know what was ahead of me. I made tons of mistakes, did lots of things wrong. And that's why I got so good. Why would this be any different? So you start seeing it as like, okay, I might not enjoy the suck because it sucks sometimes, right? There's parts that are not good about being told no and then realizing you did it completely wrong and there was a better route and a better person to tap. You learn those things along the way, but you can appreciate that means I'm getting a lot better right now. Like I'm picking up the momentum and I'm going to get to where I want to go.
What I love about everything that you have accomplished is the fact that at one point in your life, or again, this is just what I've seen, and you're not afraid to be vulnerable as well. And let me explain that. I remember when I lost my job, it was just, I didn't care. I really didn't care. What I cared about is when I wasn't making money a little bit later, and it just like, this really sucks. And I remember when I got my first, someone left a goodie bag on our door. I was pissed. I was so ticked. Instead of looking at it for what it really was as a help. And you had mentioned that at one point you expressed, I need help. And that response, I mean, in and of itself, that's knowing what it was like, maybe not the intensity that you felt it, but I remember I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to ask it. I wanted to prove it that I could do it by myself and get where I needed to be by myself. But when you recognize that you did something about it, what was that like to overcome that vulnerability of saying I need help? Because I for one did not want it, but afterward I look back and I know I needed to appreciate that, to have embraced it.
I used the analogy that was 24 hours after I got fired, and I sat and cried and felt bad myself, for 24 hours, which I think is normal, right? That anyone's going to feel badly about a situation like that after a long time. I felt badly about it. I was angry, I was upset. And then I thought, nobody's calling me. And when I noticed that, I thought, I've got to change this tide. If I get everyone that I know calling me, something's going to perk, an opportunity, someone's going to have an intro they can make, then I'll shift the tide on this. Instead of isolating myself, I'll have everyone coming to bring me that potential opportunity that I need. And I likened it to when I got divorced. I'll never forget, I got divorced and nobody was asking me on dates. And I thought, this is weird. Before I got married, people asked me on dates all the time. No one asked me anymore. Wait a minute, maybe people don't know I'm single. And so I started, every time I would go to anywhere, anything, I'd say, hey, did you hear that I got divorced? I'm single. And suddenly people were asking me out all the time. And as I sat on that couch, I'll never forget, this is just like getting divorced, Heather, in my mind, you need to let the world know you're available. And I thought, how's the fastest way I can reach a large audience? And I thought social media. And so I just posted, hey, if I've ever helped you in the last 14 years, I need to hear from you now. I was just fired and I need your help. That post went viral, reached millions of people, and that landed me on the Elvis Duran show. Halfway through that interview, which I never would have gotten had I not put that post up, he said to me, well, obviously you're writing a book. and I wasn't writing a book, right? I had just been fired and I didn't know what to do. But that man spoke a conviction and a confidence into me in that moment that changed the entire trajectory of my life. I jumped on a plane and I Googled, how do you write a book? And then that was it. That's where my first book, Confidence Creator, came from, because I asked for help and posted about it.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, and you do so many amazing things, and you refer to your son a lot. And it's obvious that you have such a fantastic relationship with your son, which is so commendable. It's being a parent myself, just knowing what I learned from my kids is amazing. And aside from the thing that he wrote, he had you write on the bottom of the shoe, what are some of the other things that he's taught you? And how has that influenced the way you do business and the things that you do for others?
You know, I'll tell you that, well, first of all the charity work that I do is usually around helping children who are not privileged, right? Because I grew up without privilege. My son has grown up very differently than I have. And I'm so grateful for that. So, you know, that's just one of the things I just always remember. I see all that he has. He goes to private school. He gets, you know, tutoring help. He gets to play sports. That's incredible, and what a gift. And so it just reminds me, and I remind him of this, whenever we can, we need to help those that don't have as much as he does. Also, though, conversely, because he grew up differently, I have a very high stress level. I run at really high speeds all the time. I'm always working. My son is much more calm and chill than me. And sometimes it frustrates me. I'll say to him, I don't understand. Why are you so calm right now? You have exams coming up, for example. Why aren't you, you know, headfirst in those books, staying up all night and making, and he's like, Mom, it doesn't have to be that way. And I actually had a therapist teach me, he grew up differently than me. He processes things in a much more reasonable fashion. And I can actually look to him as a mentor in that regard, right? Because I'm not living with food stamps right now. I'm not living as that child. However, sometimes I still react in my day-to-day as that child that's struggling and suffering, that I need to outwork everybody else. So I try to learn from him that it doesn't have to be every day is on fire. Sometimes you can be chill and allow things to come to you, and you don't need to live under panic. When you're not living under panic, sometimes your best ideas come to you. So he's been a great example and a mentor in some ways for me to see there's another way to live.
Man, I love it. And it started, for the reason I had to ask that question is when you wrote that thing, you can do all things, and it was a reminder to you even. Well, I mean, wow. And look,
what's interesting about that, so what you're referencing is the first chapter of my first book, Confidence Creator. I write about how my son asked me at 6 a.m. to write on his basketball shoes before games, I can do all things, which is actually a verse from the Bible. He had realized this from Steph Curry. When he would purchase the shoes from Steph Curry would include notes in with the shoes, I can do all things. So my son wanted to emulate Steph Curry, someone who was ahead of him, right, in basketball. And he said, Mom, do this for me. And it was an interesting moment because I thought, why do you want me to do this? And he said, I might enter the game feeling really confident and good about how I'm going to play. Halfway through the game, I might not be playing well. I might begin to doubt myself, and I have to be able to look down at my shoes and remind myself of what I'm capable of. He wanted control to pick himself back up, not to have to look outside of him. Cut to, I was at a charity event, you know, a year or two after that, and I share the story. Everybody at that event, I started getting pictures the next day. They were all writing messages on their shoes. Cut to the pandemic, and I was thinking to myself, I need a new product to sell. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm always getting people sending me pictures of messages on their shoes. I'm creating a product around messaging on your shoes. So I actually just launched a product. I just launched it this past month, where it's a product that sticks onto the bottom of your shoes that has all of our top, you know, messages that you want to be able to remind yourself, so that you don't have to like find a Sharpie and then it's going to wear off in 24 hours. It sticks with you for 1 month. And you can change your messages each month, and hopefully it helps elevate people in the same way it's helped me and my son.
That's so cool. I want to get my team that stuff, man.
I'll send you the link as soon as we hang up.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Oh my goodness. you're on fire in so many different arenas. I can't help but feel what people feel when they're in your presence and talking or listening to you to speak, because all the lessons that you've taught me just in this short time are things that I can apply immediately. And most importantly too is just looking at the relationship with my kids. You made me reflect a lot about what they truly do teach me, and it was a great reminder of letting them be my mentor. So I thank you for that. That's huge. Oh man, how about you, Gary? Anything else over there?
Yeah, no, I think I just really appreciate how you were talking earlier, how when you start looking at everyone as having as an equal, that opens up not only yourself to help others, but also allows others to help you. And you just seem to be a shining example of what people can do if they start putting that mindset into action, when you really do look at others as equal. So anyway, that's one of the biggest things that I took that I really appreciate.
Well, I'll tell you, just to that mentor mentee comment that you just made, during pandemic, I launched a group coaching program. I don't do it anymore. But anyways, one of the guys that joined the program, I didn't know. And he had laid out, an agenda, specific goals he wanted to achieve while we worked together, right? Because I asked everyone to write down what are your specific goals so we can measure success. And I said, yes, I can help you with all these things. Great. Let's set this as baseline where you're starting. This is where we're going. We had a window of 60 days, whatever it was. Anyways, at the end of the time, we've gotten to know each other very well. And he said to me, you tell me, what do you want to achieve, Heather? And I said, gosh, I'd love to land a board seat someday. I don't know how I'd go about it, but it's something that I've always had on my list of things I want to do and add value to a company. And he said, Heather, I'm on 4 different boards. And he said, it's so interesting that you happen to bring this up. The easiest way to be added to a board is to know someone on the inside, because the number one barrier to entry is trust with a CEO. He said, I can bridge that gap for you he said, I have total trust in you. I know your expertise. I know what you're talented. Let me meet with each one of my boards and see if there's one that you might add value to. And maybe it was 4 months later, I got an email from him introducing me to the CEO of one of the companies. 2 months after that, we set up a meeting. 2 months after that, I had a contract. And for the past 2 years, I've been on the board of directors with my friend, with now the CEO, who's also my friend. But it was one of those moments that it went from mentor to mentee just like that. And, it was an interesting experience for me to see we can all add value to someone in one way. And there's probably so many ways they can add value back to us too.
Man, yeah, it's rarely unidirectional. And if it is, it's kind of a worthless relationship, honestly.
Really is, man. Well, I know you're a busy individual, and I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent with us over here. And I know you have a lot more coming up this week too. But again, thank you for making that time and just teaching us some incredible nuggets of wisdom. And I'm sure that the audience is going to really benefit from it.
Well, they can keep up with me. I'm at Heather Monahan, all social media. My podcast is called Creating Confidence with Heather Monahan. And my 2 books are Confidence Creator and Overcome Your Villains.